Hello all, I'm Wadabra. Welcome back to Adastra. In the previous episode, things went from bad to worse for Marco in the first trial. He starts the day off by being dressed and powdered into a racist costume of Mira. Then he realizes that he and Amicus weren't just dancing, they're competing for the triumvirate's and Kato's attention against Cassius and Alexios. And then, to top it all off, Marco's lingua failed to translate the song, and he wound up fumbling around like the primitive ape he's been pretending to be. And of course, it cost them the trial. Later, after a long shower, Marco and Amicus talk things out, which goes surprisingly well. Then Amicus asks for a pity handy, which doesn't go so well. Amicus then suggests a cuddle session to help them both feel better. And after crawling into Amicus's lap and being swaddled by his warmth, Marco does indeed feel better. Amicus then asks some probing questions about human dating rituals, and the episode ends with Marco hoping this isn't the last time the two of them do something like this. Alright, that's the recap. Remember to like and share this video to help me appease the almighty YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. And as always, content warnings and a link to my Patreon can be found in the description below. Let's get started. It's a few days later when I'm finally able to hang out with Alex like we'd planned. Cassius had stepped up his campaigning over the past several days as his chances of becoming emperor increased. So did Amicus, after his decreased. The difference being that Alex often found himself going on campaign trips with the White Wolf, while Amicus always left me behind. I think Amicus had picked up on the fact that I don't like being out in front of so many people after the whole dance incident. Still, he promises me that when he wins the next trial, we'll go out to the city to celebrate. For now, though, I'm happy to stay in the garden with Alex, enjoying a quiet midday meal as we both talk and sip our tea.
Honestly, they should have us redo the dance if your lingua wasn't translating.
Was yours?
Well, no, but I knew it wouldn't. Wolves never intend for their lyrics to translate over the lingua because it ruins the howl, which they see to be the whole point of singing. I can understand Amicus overlooking that, though. Most wolves never see another sibling species in person in their entire lives.
Well, it's over now. On to the debate thing they're gonna do next.
Oh, yes. Cassius has been training with the best rhetorician on the moon, Marcus Manius.
I notice that he puts a bit of emphasis on the name, and I look over at him. Alex sips at his tea daintily, watching the fountain lazily.
He's offered Cassius many tips on convincing the triumvirates. Very useful tips, actually. Is Amicus doing anything similar?
I realize then that Alex is offering me information on what Cassius is doing to prepare for the trial. At least, I think he is. Whether that's the case or not, I try to remember the name of the rhetoric guy, knowing I should tell Amicus later. I'm not really sure. He hasn't told me all that much about what he's doing, but hopefully it's something similar.
Well, I recommend he study the triumvirates and their cities, if only to find the best way to convince them during the second trial.
Yep, definitely offering me information. Thing is, after seeing the way he and Cassius interacted, I wonder if I can fully trust him. You know, Cassius was saying something earlier while I was serving him about a week ago. Did you know he has plans to get rid of the triumvirates? Alex's eyes widen for a moment.
Oh, really? I wonder why.
Something about it being easier to rule directly, rather than through elected officials?
Well, that's some radical thinking, isn't it?
That's what Virginia said.
Well, she's always been rather reasonable. Honestly,
Alex leans in, lowering his voice.
I'd rather she become the Empress. But unfortunately, the wolves don't allow females to hold positions of much authority. So her chances at the throne are nil.
Alex's eyes suddenly widen as he looks over my shoulder. I raise my eyebrow, then look back to see Neferu making his way toward us. I turn around to see Alex looking down toward the ground, his tail lashing around before he holds it in his lap. The jackal stops to stand in front of us. Without a word, he delicately takes one of Alex's paws and bows low to kiss it. Alex raises his other paw to his mouth, blushing furiously. Meanwhile, Neferu just nods at me.
Good day, Alex. And Marco? How is your midday meal?
Alex still has his paw to his mouth, so I answer for him. It's okay. How are you?
Splendid!
I notice then that he's carrying a bottle in his paw, the glass glinting in the sunlight with his every move.
I was just taking a walk through the gardens this morning when I happened across a shockingly large spider that skittered across the ground at my paws.
Neferu sweeps his paw in front of himself, as if showing where the spider ran.
I can't help but wonder if I'm in danger here.
Alex finally speaks up then, squeaking with the first syllable.
No, they're rather harmless. Their venom is very mild. Ah, well, that's a relief to hear, Alex. On my home planet, I'd often have to shake my loincloths out before wearing them in case of scorpions. Oh, really? That's terrifying. It certainly can be, but it's something you get used to.
Alex and Neferu smile at each other for a moment, and I frown at the cat, wondering what the hell he's doing.
Oh yes, I came to give you this.
Neferu leans down and holds out the glass bottle, and now I see it's filled with a honey-colored liquid that sloshes lazily in the bottle.
The Buna seed oil I promised. Much better for the fur than the Adastra oils they have for us.
Alex reaches out and takes the bottle, blushing again.
Thank you, Neferu. I'll use it first thing tomorrow. And I'll see you again tomorrow to make sure you do.
The jackal winks, and I think I hear Alex make a strangled noise in his throat.
In the meantime, would you like to take a walk with me?
Neferu once again extends a paw. Alex coughs awkwardly before reaching out to take it.
Wonderful! You're always such great company. Would you like to join us as well, Marco?
I think back on what had happened in the baths. No thanks.
In that case, I'll see you around the palace. Yeah. See ya, Marco.
Neferu offers his arm to the cat, and just like that, they're off into the gardens, disappearing around the many bushes lining the footpath. I stare after them, a bit confused, still unclear on what exactly the jackal is doing. I'm also reminded that I need to ask Alex about why the hell he told Neferu about my intelligence. Only problem is, I don't know how to do that without seeming suspicious. Technically, there isn't a reason why I'm supposed to be a secret, and I feel like bringing it up will only give the cat reason to dig more deeply. As I'm wondering all of this, I notice a shape in the bushes, near the ones that Alex and Neferu disappeared behind. Then I see a flash of red, and maybe an elbow poking out. What the? Amicus? I yell out in his direction, and I see the wolf jump, suddenly coming out from behind his cover.
Yes, was just having a look at the roses.
The wolf walks toward me, his paw behind his back. I raise an eyebrow at him. Were you spying on us? Were you trying to avoid Neferu or something? Amicus ignores me this time.
How was your day, Marco?
Okay. I try to look around the wolf's side at whatever he's hiding behind his back, but he turns accordingly to keep it obscured. What are you doing?
Well...
Amicus takes a deep breath, and I feel myself starting to get nervous. Then he goes down on one knee.
Marco, over the past few weeks, I've come to enjoy your company immensely.
My mouth drops.
And over the past few weeks, I've come to realize that we share so much in common in terms of our goals and desires.
Amicus gives me a coy smile at that. What are you...
So, I decided I should take the next step to make you feel more welcome and to show you how much I appreciate your kindness and understanding.
The wolf suddenly swings his paws to the front, revealing what he'd been hiding. It's a bouquet of purple flowers, lavenders to be exact, along with several smaller white flowers sprinkled into the mix.
Marco, will you date me?
I stare at the wolf, still taking in the presentation he'd just given me. My mouth still hangs open, and I make a few, sounds as I try to form a coherent sentence to respond in my mind.
I probably messed that up, huh? Well, hopefully the message came across clearly. What do you think?
I'm stunned.
And that's... good?
Amicus, what is this?
I did something wrong, didn't I?
Well, I mean, did you mean to do it? The whole thing is crazy, but Amicus's demeanor doesn't really match with the proposal he'd just made.
Did I mean to ask you out on a date?
Well, yeah. Did you?
Yes.
Now the wolf is really fidgeting, tugging at his cape nervously as he lowers the bouquet to hang limply at his side. I have an odd butterflies in the stomach feeling that won't seem to go away. I don't know what it means, but I try to ignore it. The wolf suddenly deflates, looking dejected.
Did I pick up the incorrect meaning?
I clear my throat, trying to gather my wits. What, do you think dating is?
Well, what you told me. It's a relationship status that enables you to become closer, learn more about each other, along with normalizing physical intimacy.
Well, he seems to have it down for the most part. The part that I'm having trouble with, though... Well, people that date also tend to have, I guess, feelings for each other?
Well, yes. I have very friendly feelings toward you, and I want to make you more comfortable around me, especially when it comes to physical intimacy. Isn't that the point of dating?
I sigh, realizing I hadn't explained it well enough. But then I hadn't realized that Amicus was planning to do this either. Well, usually people don't do it unless they love each other. My voice gets quieter and quieter over the course of the sentence, until Amicus has to poke his ears forward to hear me.
Love?
Yeah.
Oh.
Amicus stands there for a moment, before the insides of his ears turn bright red.
You said it was casual.
The wolf raises his voice, the sudden increase in volume making me jump. Well, it is. I mean, You don't necessarily have to be in love to date, but the intention is usually to find love.
Dear gods! Was your intention just to humiliate me after the dance?
What the hell are you talking about? How was I supposed to know you were planning this?
I think me asking those questions had made it fairly obvious.
You assume way too much.
Clearly.
The wolf tosses the bouquet to the side, letting it land on the bench before it rolls off to the ground. Amicus slumps onto the bench next to me, his ears still red. I let him grumble to himself for a minute or two, waiting to let him cool off from the initial embarrassment. Then I reach up to rest a hand on his broad shoulder. Sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you. Besides, how were you supposed to know? It's an Earth thing. Amicus waves a paw.
It's fine. Like you said, I assume too much.
I lean over to pick up the bouquet, seeing how the flowers just kind of look bunched together. You make this yourself?
Well, yes. The garden has many flowers.
It smells like you.
Yes.
It looks good.
Thank you.
We sit quietly for a few more minutes as I pretend to examine all of the flowers in the bouquet.
So, it's either friendship or love with humans? No physical intimacy unless you're bound to fall in love?
What do you mean?
Like this dating culture you have. You were interested in giving me that sexual favor. Does that mean you're also interested in love with me as well?
I blush. Well, not exactly.
Didn't you say dating allowed for more intimacy? But dating is also meant to look for love?
I sigh and set the bouquet aside. Things are changing, becoming more casual. I say the word carefully, and Amicus snorts. But I guess the term you might be looking for is friends with benefits.
Benefits?
Friends that have sex, basically.
Ah, I see. We haven't done that, though.
No, but I'm not gonna make you date me just to get a handjob. Amicus scratches behind his head before looking away again. Once again, I find myself feeling bad for him. Listen, if we weren't having this whole... I lower my voice. Illegal space adventure, I might say yes.
What? Really?
I said might.
Oh, really?
I think you're missing a key word there.
I think I understand.
I find myself turning red again, wishing I'd just kept my mouth shut.
Well, maybe I might as well.
Well, you already asked.
Without knowing the full meaning.
I try to think of something else to change the subject, knowing that my blush is clear as day to the wolf and that he's very much enjoying it. Anyway, Alexios told me that Cassius was training under a rhetoric person. Marcus Manlius or something? Amicus suddenly frowns.
Marcus Manlius? Really?
I think that's what he said.
Damn.
Amicus's tone is that of awe. Is that bad?
It's simply surprising. He's the most famous Adastran rhetorician there is.
Should I be worried?
No. In fact, now that you've told me, I'm in much better shape. I now have an idea of what style he might use, so that will make it easier to counter his points.
If you're sure.
Of course. Now come to my room and help me practice, just to make extra certain I'll win.
We get up and walk back to the palace through the gardens, leaving the bouquet of flowers behind on the bench. Amicus seems to have gotten over his embarrassment about the whole incident pretty quickly. It's just like him to be able to do that, actually. In fact, we're laughing and talking just as easily as we always have, the wolf nudging me every few minutes to punctuate something he says, each one causing me to stumble.
Anyway, Cass tends to stutter over his words in front of large crowds. Not much a rhetorician can do about that.
The wolf reaches out a paw, pressing it to the black square.
Besides, what exactly is he?
Amicus and I stare in surprise as Cassius stares back at us with what looks like even more surprise. Then his eyes narrow.
Excuse me?
He tries to move around us, but Amicus blocks his way, growling.
What the hell are you doing in here, Cassius?
Amicus seems to reserve his actual yelling only for Cassius, so it makes me jump when I hear it. Cassius collects himself quickly, despite Amicus's intimidating snarls.
Not much of your business, is it?
If you're in my room, then it is my business. What are you doing?
The wolf starts to advance on Cassius, stopping just feet away.
Move, Amicus. Otherwise, I'm calling Kato.
Amicus eyes Cassius closely, then finally pulls back, folding his arms.
Snooping around to find something that might give you a chance in the trial. I can tell you now that you'll be coming up short.
Obviously. You've nothing to offer to help me win.
Then why come here?
Cassius ignores the other wolf, walking past Amicus before passing by me. He turns then.
And you know, I shouldn't be worried after the pitiable display you and your pet put on.
He turns to me, and I can't help but frown at him.
As stupid as he is ugly.
I know that Cassius is just trying to get under Amicus's skin. He knows that he cares about me. But as Cassius reaches out to brush my chin with a paw, I can't stop myself from batting it away. Cassius's eyes widen then, and I see his paw draw back. I flinch, but immediately Amicus is there, reaching out to grab Cassius by his cape. The smaller wolf is pulled back from me, but Amicus doesn't stop there. As Cassius stumbles past Amicus, the bigger wolf swings his paw, smacking Cassius square in the nose. Cassius immediately goes down on his ass, at which point I hear another sound. Amicus and I stare down at the smaller wolf as he sits there, stunned. Then he suddenly scrambles up to his feet, a paw to his rear.
Amicus, you bastard! Tail-raising lover of ass!
I take a step back as Cassius practically sprays blood from his mouth. Amicus pulls me to his side, eyes narrowed, but I can feel his heart hammering against my shoulder.
I'll throw you both in the dungeon for that! I'll have him executed when I'm emperor!
I see tears start to spill out of Cassius's eyes before he turns and stumbles out of the room, his tail hanging limply to the side. Amicus and I stand there for a long time after he leaves, the silence almost oppressive after the loud fight. A few minutes later, Amicus is flat on his stomach, looking under his bed as he mumbles something under his breath. I stand awkwardly off to the side, watching as he sweeps a paw underneath, as if feeling for something. What are you doing? Amicus grunts as he gets to his knees, then stands up, looking up at the ceiling as he turns in a slow circle.
Looking for whatever Cass might have been doing.
You know what he was doing?
I have my suspicions.
Which are? Amicus stops his turning and looks at me, folding his arms.
Well, I'm not sure, but a recording device possibly. Or he was just snooping for information.
Can we just ask Com?
No, his capabilities are very limited, despite what his intelligence might suggest. He doesn't record our activities specifically so we can't spy on each other. Rules put in place millennia ago.
I sigh and look at the door, still feeling a little shaken up at what had just happened. Why can't you lock the door or something? Amicus shrugs.
That's something only the Emperor can do. Again, rules that have been in place for a very long time.
That doesn't seem safe.
Well, only the most trusted are allowed in the palace after all, which tends to only be family.
Aside from Neferu.
Aside from him, yes.
You don't have much freedom for being the Emperor's son.
You just noticed.
Amicus huffs and stands in the middle of the room, his arms folded, a deep frown on his face. He was probably just trying to find out what you're planning for the next trial. We know some stuff about him already. Amicus continues to look concerned. What is it?
Amicus
lowers his voice.
worry it might have something to do with you. After what he said as he was leaving, it's left me uneasy, is all.
Oh yeah, that thing about executing me. I haven't had time to think about the possibility of someone on the verge of near absolute power wanting me dead yet. Do you think he was serious? Amicus is quiet for a moment.
No. But obviously, I'm not going to assume he wasn't. I won't even give him a chance at the emperorship now.
I frown. And you were going to before?
No. I'm just going to make extra sure now.
I'm quiet, deciding to sit on the bed instead. I don't like that this situation has become a lot more serious than it already was. After a moment, Amicus comes to sit next to me, the depression he creates in the mattress forcing me to lean sideways into him. He wraps an arm around me.
Don't worry about it at all. He has no chance. And besides, I wouldn't let him touch you.
How would you be able to do that if he's the Emperor, though?
Well, I'm his older brother. Some relationships don't change, even if the official ones do.
I stay quiet, unconvinced.
Anyway, it would look awfully bad on his record. He just let his anger get the best of him. He'll quickly forget about the matter with the next trial coming up.
Amicus squeezes me.
And this is all assuming he'd win. He won't.
That's what you said last time.
And we had an unforeseeable mishap last time. There isn't much possibility for one of those to happen in this trial.
We sit there a while longer, Amicus rubbing my shoulder with his paw. Despite my rising anxiety, it's comforting, and before long, I'm leaning my head against his shoulder. A week later, Amicus and I sit in the gardens, enjoying the cool, fresh morning air. So what's your main argument?
That Adastra has been on a steady rise, politically and economically, since the beginning of the Adastra policy era. Why take steps backwards when we're so clearly moving in the right direction?
And Cassius?
That Adastra's decline over the past few hundred years is due to that policy. Instead of looking outward to the children and other siblings, we should instead be looking inward to better ourselves.
Amicus scratches his nose.
Well, that's the basics anyway. Obviously, there is much, much more to it.
So how are you going to counter that argument? It seems like a pretty good one to me.
If the wheel of your chariot is caught on a stone, does that mean the campaign should be turned around and ended?
He looks at me, and I just stare back.
Well, the answer is no. You simply need to give it a push.
In other words?
In other words, the downturn over the past 200 years is simply a stone in the road. Why throw away 10 millennia of progress due to a few centuries of light hardship? Besides, it was completely predictable. The war with the Chemians and the resulting end of diplomatic relations with most of the other siblings caused it. We certainly can't have any leverage in the galaxy when the only siblings speaking to us are the cats. If we can fix those relations, we could be well on our way to prosperity again.
Well, that and unstunting your children.
Yes, that too.
Which I still can't believe you did.
Again, it wasn't me. Anyway, that will also be part of my argument. Upraise the children fully, as the partial uplift programs are now, clearly, a failure.
And end the slavery?
And consider the debts repaid, yes.
Debts that didn't exist in the first place. Sure.
Listen, Marco. I have to use very careful language so as to not upset the people, not to mention the triumvirates. Feelings are sensitive at times like these and must be considered despite how tedious or untrue it can be.
Amicus is right. The wolves are very sensitive when it comes to their culture and history. I'm starting to realize that their hubris is probably their biggest downfall. I lean back on the bench, starting to feel a little sweaty under the rising sun. Isn't that going to be Cassius's whole thing, though? Appeal to their feelings? Throw out the etiquette and get straight to the point?
Possibly. But I'm confident my composure and consideration will win over the triumvirates.
You ever consider not being so confident? Maybe preparing for the worst?
I'm confident that I'm prepared for the worst.
I roll my eyes, and Amicus glares at me.
I don't understand why you're so insistent on projecting yourself onto me. Just because you aren't sure of yourself doesn't mean that I should be the same.
I frown. Ouch.
Sorry, but I strongly believe in what I'm doing. How can I ever be an emperor if I'm not sure that what I'm doing is right?
Sure, but all I'm saying is that you might not always be right, and you need to be prepared for that.
Trust me, I'm learning as I go. And after that last trial, I'm preparing for everything.
How are they even going to choose the winner? Wouldn't they just pick who they agree with most?
Technically, no. They're supposed to choose the best performance, the most convincing and dramatic.
How very wolven. So you just have to convince a majority of the triumvirates?
Well, yes, but Cato's vote holds twice the power of a triumvirate vote. So I need at least either 4 triumvirates, or 2 triumvirates plus Cato.
And what are Cato's beliefs? Amicus shrugs.
He doesn't talk about them much, but again, it shouldn't matter.
He's certainly right about Cato not talking much about himself. But that tends to be the way everyone is around here. I can tell Amicus isn't all that interested in talking about this, though, so I try to think of something else. What started the war with the Chemians, by the way?
Their ambitions got the best of them. They began to interact with some of our abandoned children, some of which were very close to Adastra.
Oh, is that illegal or something?
Well, technically not if they're abandoned. But it's never really happened, considering if a species is abandoned, then that's a signal to the other siblings that the race is unupliftable.
So they weren't breaking any rules?
Even if they weren't breaking laws, they were clearly provoking us by uplifting races just a few hundred light years away from our moon. They are an arrogant people.
Neferu seems nice. Always polite. Amicus smirks.
Well, that's how they often get their way. A facade of niceties to pull you into their trap. Either way, the war was a draw despite their technological advantage. Wolven tenacity beats Chemian tech any day.
Despite Amicus's more progressive views on things, he's not immune to Wolven hubris either, it seems. But I'm not in the mood to argue with him about that. You know, Neferu reminds me of a culture on Earth. The Egyptians. I wonder if they uplifted there too. Amicus looks down at me, then snorts.
More likely they just share simple aesthetics. Your people being uplifted twice while having no knowledge of the Galaxius is impossible. The Chemians rarely abandon anyway. Actually, I don't think they ever have. They tend to have the best of luck.
Amicus stretches.
Honestly, though, this talk is boring. This is my only day off before the trial next week. We should be doing something fun.
Like what? Amicus looks around, then grins.
Want to practice Pugnu with me?
No.
Aw, come on.
I know Amicus would go easy on me, but I really don't feel like getting sweaty and exhausted right now. Why don't we just go to the island and have a picnic again?
Oh, yeah. Great idea.
Amicus grins and hops up, already making his way to the beach as he calls out to Com to get the food ready. With a sigh, I get up and jog after him toward the sightseer. I stand on the beach, hands on my hips as I look out at the sparkling lake. The breeze that's coming off the water, cool and soothing. Adastra City sparkles in the distance as well, making the tall structures look like they have a glass or crystal coating. I look back at Amicus, the wolf in the process of spreading out a blanket under the shade of the trees. You sure Kato isn't going to kick your ass for doing this again? I see the wolf's ears flick down for a moment.
That was for missing an appointment. I don't have any today.
I resist telling Amicus that it was about much more than a missed lesson, and instead I walk over to help him spread the blanket out more evenly.
Thank you. Now, shall we eat?
Amicus pulls the cloth off the blanket, revealing tightly packed and covered plates, along with bottles of wine and virdi. This time, the food is a selection of wraps full of meat and cheeses, along with chilled salted cucumbers. Amicus splays out in that luxurious Roman way as he pulls his plate of food up next to his chest, immediately stuffing a whole wrap into his muzzle. I'm a bit more dainty, instead sitting next to the wolf cross-legged as I nibble at my own wrap. We eat in silence for a little while, Amicus gobbling up the majority of the food, like always. I notice the wolf drinking more wine than he usually does, probably because it's his day off. After taking a particularly large swig, he points at my legs.
I don't know how you're comfortable doing that. Looks like hell on the knees.
Well, laying down like you are actually hurts my neck. I don't know how you do it for so long. I rub the left side of my neck as I say that, then carefully uncork the bottle of virdi.
Kato's the same way, but he's old.
I take a sip of the cold drink that I've come to really like over the past few weeks. Speaking of Kato, who exactly is he? How would he become the acting emperor? I try circling us back around to the conversation we'd had earlier, wanting to know more about the wolf that's apparently ruling all of Adastra right now.
Oh, well, he was Father's friend since childhood. He was the Imperial Legate during the Chemian War.
Is that an important position?
It's the highest rank in the military, aside from the Emperor, of course. He's credited with preventing outright defeat.
Huh. Must be kind of weird for him to have Neferu walking around in the palace.
Another reason I wonder why Virginia brought him to the palace. Kato's scars aren't just physical.
Physical?
I take it you've noticed the visor, yes? Well, he lost an eye and part of his skull during the war. Eventually, the other eye failed as well, and he had to go to our parent to have mechanical vision installed. Anyway, Neferu was born decades after the war, so I doubt Kato holds anything against him specifically.
Is he alright with the alliance thing? Knowing this about Kato makes me worry that he might not agree with Amicus on one of his most controversial policies.
I doubt that, but I think he understands it's necessary if we're to begin re-establishing relations with the other siblings.
I feel my stomach turn a little as I realize we might be disadvantaged in this trial as well. Amicus, what's going to happen if you lose the next trial?
Again, don't worry.
I know you don't think it can happen, but if it does, what happens to me? Amicus frowns at me, a meat wrap halfway to his face before he sets it back down.
First of all, I won't have you worrying about Cassius's words. What he said was out of anger, and besides, I'll have measures in place to stop it from ever happening.
What measures?
I'm not fully sure of that yet, but I will have them in place by the time the next trial comes. Very good measures.
And aside from that, what do I do next? Amicus thinks.
Like I said before, I'll ensure a way home for you. The problem is the illegality of you being here. The more people who know about it, the more likely a monitor may be alerted to what happened. I need to be very careful about who I let know about the situation.
Okay. I look down at my food, suddenly having lost my appetite. Amicus sighs, sounding annoyed.
Come on, Marco. This is likely going to be your last few weeks here. Stop focusing so much on what's unlikely to happen. Let's enjoy ourselves a little bit.
The wolf suddenly sits up, brushing the crumbs off his fur before swigging down more wine.
Come, let's practice combat.
What? I said I didn't want to do that.
Well, since you're so worried about Cassius, I'll teach you a few tricks to take him down.
Take him down?
Well, I don't trust him to keep his paws to himself now, so if he ever tries to take advantage of you while I'm not around, you can at least hold him off long enough to get away.
Yeah, and that won't make everything worse.
Well, after what happened a few days ago, I suppose it can't get much worse.
I slowly get to my feet, straightening out my robes. I'm not so sure about that. Besides, we just ate. Amicus laughs.
It's not like you're Kato. I think I'll be able to keep my food and drink down.
What about me?
I'm not going to hit you or anything.
Amicus squares his stance, standing in the sand off to the side of the blanket, still in the shade. I sigh, realizing that Amicus is in one of those moods where it's hard to talk him out of doing something. I walk over to stand in front of the wolf, my arms folded.
And about Kato, I could probably beat him in a fair fight. He just caught me by surprise that last time.
I pause, then raise an eyebrow. What do you mean?
I mean, he started fighting no holds barred without warning. I'd have given him the business if I'd known you were going to do that.
Hey, I don't think any less of you for losing a fight. To an old man. Amicus furrows his brow, the way he does when he realizes that I'm teasing him.
I'm serious.
So am I. I mean, you almost had me that one time in the spaceship. You're a real force to be reckoned with.
It's not smart to tease a wolf before a fight, human.
I'm not teasing.
Mm-hmm. And kicking an unsuspecting man in the balls isn't exactly a win in my book.
It is in mine.
Clearly. Speaking of which...
Amicus suddenly steps forward, thrusting his knee up at my crotch. I can only watch in horror as it comes up fast, stopping just an inch from my groin. We both stand there for a moment before I gasp and stumble back, holding my nuts even though Amicus didn't make contact. What the hell?
If you don't want Cassius to hold broken bones against you, go for the genitals. That should be enough to stun him. This goes for anyone else who might try to attack you.
Annoyed, I make as if to do the same to Amicus, but he's already blocking.
Haha, yes, like that. Though try to be a little more subtle. You telegraph your moves far too much.
I stop struggling with the wolf, breathing heavily. Fine. Then, as Amicus starts to drop his guard, I try to swat him in the crotch. He snatches up my hand immediately.
Ah, better, Marco. Though you should probably try something harder than a flowery slap.
I try to shove the wolf away, but he steps to the side and gives me a shove as well. I trip over something, and it's not until I'm on my ass that I realize he'd stuck his foot out behind me. I look up at Amicus as he stands over me, the expression on his face showing me that he's trying very hard not to laugh.
Tangle up his feet and you should be able to send him to the ground fairly easily. If he breaks any of his bones from the fall, then at least he can't say you did it intentionally.
Amicus reaches down with a paw to help me up. I take it, and he pulls me up easily, almost lifting me off my feet. This is great and all, but I don't see how this is going to help me. I wasn't even the one that broke his tail, and he wanted me killed.
Again, with me standing in his way, he won't ever get the chance to try anything, if he even intends to. This is only to give you a chance to get away from him.
Amicus brushes the sand off my robes.
Besides, this is useful in any situation, not just for Cassius!
Amicus chokes on his last syllable as I ram my shoulder into him, grabbing at his legs to try and trip him up, kind of like I saw Kato do to him in the amphitheater. Obviously, someone as small as me going up against a hulking wolf like Amicus is bound to fail, but the wolf does stumble back a few steps.
Hey!
Amicus chuckles, and I feel him let himself fall backwards to the sand. It reminds me of the last time we'd wrestled on the beach, except now I end up on top, with my fall cushioned by his body, my face bouncing against his massive chest. Amicus grins at me.
Oof. Not bad, not bad. With a little more force, you might be able to knock down someone as small as Cassius.
I pin the wolf down, my hands on his shoulders. Oh, please. I knocked you down fair and square. This time, I'm the one to yelp on my last syllable, Amicus easily reversing our positions as he rolls us both over. I find myself staring up at the wolf, his massive paws on my shoulders, his knees spread to either side of my thighs as he's careful not to rest his weight on top of me. He grins down at me, chest heaving for breath as his tongue dangles out of his muzzle a bit, the way it sometimes does when he's buzzed, giving his grin a dopey quality. He's hunched over me to the point where his tongue almost touches my nose. Although I try to keep my face in a scowl, I can't stop the smile from coming through. And pretty soon, I'm laughing a little. I'm about to tell Amicus that this whole thing is hardly fair when he leans down fully, pressing his lips to mine in a kiss. I gasp in surprise, but it's through my nose as my mouth is sealed to his. My eyes are wide, his closed as he presses harder against my lips. As he'd bent over me, his paws left my shoulders to instead hold my head steady, one paw against my cheek, the other cupped around my head, his whole body huddling around my face. I don't move, not hugging back, but not turning away either. Instead, I just lay there as I feel my heart skip a beat. The feeling of the big, strong wolf crouched over me, kissing me, sending a thrill from my chest down to my crotch. The wolf's broad, cold nose twitches against mine before a hot huff of breath escapes it and washes over my face. At the same time, Amicus suddenly rolls off of me, our lips parting just as quickly as they'd connected as he flops to the side on his back, mirroring my spread eagle position. We lay there next to each other, my heart hammering as I listen to the wolf breathing heavily next to me. Aside from that, the only other sounds are the waves washing up against the shore a few dozen yards away. A few minutes pass in silence as I wait for the wolf to say something. He doesn't, and finally it gets to the point where I have to say something. So... Amicus responds instantly with an innocent, inquisitive grunt. What was that?
That? Oh, the kiss.
Yeah.
Just thought I owed it to you after Mira. I botched it during the performance after all.
The wolf sounds distant, distracted, like he's not paying attention to me. I finally prop myself up on an elbow, looking directly at Amicus now. Really? Like a child, Amicus looks away toward the lake, not saying anything. I wait a while longer, giving him a chance to respond. A chance he doesn't take. I sigh. Talk to me.
What is there to say?
I frown. A lot. I'm kinda confused, honestly. A big, huffing sigh. Then,
I like you, Marco. Quite a bit, in fact.
I know. I like you too. We'd technically confessed our feelings to each other when Amicus asked me on that date. But only technically. Are you drunk?
Maybe a little. But I knew what I was doing.
More silence. Amicus. Could you look at me? Amicus's ears go flat. Then he slowly turns his head toward me, but his eyes are down, looking at my chest rather than my face. I think about making a "my eyes are up here" joke, but I know it'll fall flat with him. Listen, we've already sort of talked about this. The problem is the situation we're in. It makes the whole dating thing impossible. I see Amicus smile at the word, then frown again.
I know. But if we feel the same way, why not be a little closer? I know you'll have to leave soon, but that doesn't mean we can't enjoy the time we have together.
Sure, but I think that'll make saying goodbye a little harder, don't you?
Maybe, but we'll find a way to see each other again.
What he's saying makes sense, but this whole situation has red flags all over it. Having feelings for my abductor in a situation that's completely illegal is so wrong in so many ways. Amicus is talking about it like it could be an innocent fling. But this feels like more than that. The wolf has that same dejected look he'd worn when he'd come out to me a few weeks ago. So I reach out a hand and rest it in his paw. He looks at me then, ears still low, but his expression hopeful. Everything's just so messed up and complicated.
Yes. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have kissed you.
Maybe not. I swallow. But I liked it. Amicus snaps his eyes back up to look at me.
Really?
Yeah. The wolf lets out a huge sigh of relief.
You didn't kiss back, though. It worried me that I'd made a mistake once again.
I was surprised is all. And what do you mean, once again? The wolf seems to contemplate something, then turns on his side too, finally facing me.
About 5 years ago, I shared my first kiss with another male.
Oh?
At the time, there were rumors that I'd performed poorly with a female my father had arranged me to be with.
Oh. Amicus's ears turn red.
Anyway, so this male approaches me during the summer festival. He was the son of one of the triumvirs of Tricelli. He made it very clear what he wanted from me. He kissed me on the balcony while a covert drone recorded the exchange. It was broadcast on the information channels the next day.
I frown. Why? Amicus shrugs, looking down at the sand.
The triumvir had a past grievance with my father. He used mine and his own son's sexual preferences to get back at him.
What happened then?
Well, father used his power to shut down the networks, along with banishing the triumvir and his family to Anchorus.
Amicus nods up at the sky, where Anchorus looms monolithically in its faded, chalky gray.
It was an unpopular decision, but father felt it had to be done. Obviously, it's left me a bit worried about kissing and pursuing other men.
I squeeze his paw. Well, you don't have to worry about that with me, obviously. I don't know anyone here, and I'm trying to stay out of other people's business as much as possible.
I know.
Amicus squeezes back.
I'm still sorry, though. I should have asked. Or not done it.
You're fine. Another stretch of silence, and I get the feeling that Amicus is waiting for an answer, which he confirms with what he says next.
So, if you're fine with it, did you want to date me?
Amicus says the foreign word very carefully, and for a moment, the lingua skips a beat in its steady translation, allowing him to speak the word unfiltered. It's still his voice, but the heavy accent that comes through is surprising, even a little sexy. I know I should say no, though. The red flags fluttering ominously around our precarious, even dangerous situation. I'll think about it over the next few days, then let you know. Amicus smiles a little.
Okay.
But you need to be focused on the trial, so no thinking about this while I'm deciding.
Of course.
I groan inwardly as I realize I've just added another distraction to the wolf's goal of becoming emperor. You promise this won't distract you?
Definitely not.
I give the wolf a look of disbelief, and he responds with a glare.
Marco, I've wanted this my entire life. I know it might not have seemed like it earlier, but I'm taking this very, very seriously.
And I won't be a distraction?
Of course not. In fact, I think it would be rather positive for me to know that you return my feelings to some degree. It gives me even more confidence.
Oh God, no!
Hey!
Amicus sets a paw on my shoulder, and it looks like he wants to lean in and kiss me again. But he doesn't.
Thank you for understanding, and for putting up with me. I have a good feeling about, well, everything now.
I don't know how much I agree, considering our situation is causing us so many problems. But I set my hand on his paw anyway. Sure. Welcome to the after reading, where I briefly discuss some thoughts I had while making this episode. First, Amicus's little white lie. Previously, Amicus had told Marco that he was simply asking questions about human dating rituals so he would better understand Marco's boundaries. But as we saw here, he had ulterior motives, and it backfired spectacularly. This is an important lesson for everybody to learn. Do not, under any circumstances, assume the person you're talking to can read into your mind or intentions. We all know what happens when you assume. Marco does a decent job of diffusing the situation, giving Amicus a moment to cool off before assuring him that he never intended to cause the wolf embarrassment, and Amicus is humble enough to acknowledge that he was wrong. So even though this situation happened due to a lack of good communication, they were able to clean up the mess with good communication. Second, we see that Amicus is not immune to his culture's hubris, even if he's more progressive than most. This is true for all people, including ourselves. We're all subtly influenced by our culture, upbringing, religion, in ways that we are completely unaware of. And like with Amicus here, not all of these influences will be positive. This should serve as a constant reminder to us that we're not the pinnacle of justice, morality, or perfection, and that we're pretty much just as flawed as everyone else we share this world with. Third, Marco wonders if the Chemians also uplifted on Earth. And I believe they totally did, but Amicus doesn't see how that's possible. He's blinded by his own worldview and uses the word impossible instead of improbable, so he's unable to see the emerging picture from the pieces that Marco, an outsider, is starting to put together himself. He even admits that the Chemians have never abandoned any of their children, but chalks it up to good luck instead of the Chemians' beliefs and actions, because that would mean challenging his current preconceived worldview. Fourth, during their picnic, Amicus instructed Calm to prepare an assortment of wraps for their meal, something Amicus learned Marco enjoyed a few episodes back, so good on him for paying attention. And finally, the kiss. Amicus was right when he acknowledged that he shouldn't have done it without permission. I will give him a little grace here, though, since after their talk in the gardens, he already knew Marco sort of returned his feelings, but it still doesn't make it okay. So, with the second trial rapidly approaching, will things turn out any better from here? Find out in the next episode of Adastra. If you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a like, share it with fellow degenerates, and leave a comment for the almighty YouTube algorithm. Until next time, thanks for watching.